Daniel Foster wiped dust from another leather-bound volume as afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of Willowbrook Public Library. At 32 years old, he had spent the last decade preserving stories while his own life remained quietly uneventful. The library existed on the edge of town where old brick buildings gave way to modern developments. Most people rushed past it without a second glance, much like they rushed past Daniel himself. His appearance matched his profession perfectly. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose, brown hair perpetually disheveled from running fingers through it while reading, clothes chosen for comfort rather than style. He moved through the stacks with practiced ease, finding homes for returned books and helping the occasional visitor locate forgotten titles. The work suited him. Books never judged. They never compared him to others or found him lacking. The festival preparations had begun outside 3 days ago. Willowbrook's annual harvest celebration transformed the town square into a carnival of lights, music, and laughter. Daniel typically avoided such events. Crowds made him uncomfortable, and watching happy couples reminded him of his solitude. But this year felt different. This year, Sophia had returned. Sophia Chen had left Willowbrook 12 years ago to pursue medical school. She graduated top of her class, completed a prestigious surgical residency, and built a reputation that spread far beyond their small town. Everyone who knew her growing up expected greatness from her. Beauty combined with intelligence created a person destined for extraordinary things. When news spread that she had accepted a position at Willowbrook General Hospital, the entire community buzzed with excitement. Daniel had known Sophia since kindergarten. They walked the same hallways, attended the same classes, lived in the same neighborhood. But they existed in different worlds. Sophia orbited among the brightest stars while Daniel remained firmly planted on Earth. He remembered her kindness, though. Unlike others who dismissed him, Sophia always offered genuine smiles. She asked about his interests and listened when he answered. Those small moments sustained him through difficult years. Her return stirred something long dormant in his heart. He found himself thinking about possibilities he had abandoned long ago. What if he tried? What if he reached beyond his comfortable shadows and took a chance? The idea terrified him. But terror felt better than eternal wondering. The festival opened Friday evening with a ceremony in the town square. Daniel stood at the edge of the crowd watching Mayor Thompson deliver the traditional welcome speech. String lights crisscrossed overhead, casting warm glows on upturned faces. Food vendors filled the air with competing aromas of kettle corn, grilled meats, and fresh pastries. Children darted between adult legs, chasing each other with glow sticks. Sophia arrived fashionably late, drawing attention like a magnet draws iron filings. She wore a simple blue dress that somehow looked expensive and effortless simultaneously. Her dark hair fell in waves past her shoulders, and her smile could power the festival lights. People gravitated toward her immediately, eager to welcome her home and hear stories about her impressive career. Daniel watched from his peripheral position, content to observe. But then Sophia's eyes found his across the crowd. She waved enthusiastically and began moving toward him, leaving confused admirers in her wake. His heart hammered against his ribs. They talked for an hour while the festival swirled around them. Sophia asked about the library, about his life, about everything he had done in her absence. Her genuine interest felt like oxygen after years of holding his breath. She shared stories about surgery, about saving lives, about the exhaustion and exhilaration of her work. But she also confessed to loneliness, to missing home, to feeling disconnected from authentic relationships. Something clicked into place during that conversation. Daniel realized that success and beauty did not shield anyone from fundamental human needs. Sophia needed connection as much as he did, perhaps even more because she had spent so long performing for others. The decision formed gradually, then arrived all at once with crystal clarity. He would ask her, not someday in some perfect future moment, but now, while courage still burned hot in his chest. Saturday evening found the festival in full celebration mode. The band played upbeat music that had people dancing in the square. Daniel had spent the day preparing. He purchased a simple silver ring from the jewelry shop. Nothing extravagant, but genuine and beautiful in its simplicity. He rehearsed words in his mind, discarding dozens of versions before settling on honest directness. He found Sophia near the dessert tables, laughing with old school friends. His approach drew curious glances. When he asked if he could speak with her privately, whispers began immediately. The crowd sensed something happening and gathered closer, creating an impromptu audience. Daniel's hands trembled as he lowered himself to one knee. The conversations around them died to shocked silence. He looked up at Sophia, whose expression shifted from confusion to surprise to something he could not quite read. Then the laughter started. Someone in the crowd snickered. The sound spread like wildfire. Within seconds, dozens of people were laughing openly. Not gentle chuckles, but harsh, mocking laughter that cut like razors. Comments floated through the air. He cannot be serious. What is he thinking? She is completely out of his league. This is embarrassing. Daniel's face burned with humiliation, but he forced himself to continue. Sophia, I know this seems sudden. I know people think I am not worthy of you, but I have loved you since we were children. You are the kindest person I have ever known, and I want to spend my life making you as happy as you make me. Will you marry me? The laughter intensified. Someone yelled for him to save himself the embarrassment. Another suggested he needed psychiatric help. The crowd's cruelty reached levels that shocked even those uncomfortable with the display. But Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Daniel kneeling before her, at the simple ring held in shaking hands, at the raw vulnerability on his face. Something stirred in her memory, something important trying to surface. Her mind flashed to water, to fear, to a boy's hand gripping hers tightly. She reached down and pulled Daniel to his feet. The laughter faltered, confusion replacing mockery. Sophia took the ring from his palm and slipped it onto her own finger. Her voice carried clearly across the suddenly quiet square. Yes, Daniel. Yes, I will marry you. The crowd's silence felt heavier than their laughter. Sophia took Daniel's hand and led him away from the festival, away from staring eyes and dropped jaws. They walked without speaking until they reached Riverside Park, where the sound of flowing water replaced human judgment. Daniel finally found his voice. You did not have to do that. I understand if you only said yes to save me from further humiliation. I release you from any obligation. Sophia turned to face him, moonlight reflecting in her eyes. When you knelt down, something happened to me. I remembered water. I remembered being afraid. I remembered your face, younger but the same. What does that mean? Daniel's heart began racing for an entirely different reason. He had wondered if she remembered. The doctors said trauma could cause memory suppression, especially in children. He had carried that day with him for 20 years, but perhaps she had locked it away. Do you remember the summer before 6th grade? We went to the river with a group of kids. You wanted to cross on the old fallen tree that spanned the water. Sophia's brow furrowed with concentration. Fragments surfaced slowly. She recalled sunshine, laughter, the roughness of bark under her hands. She remembered stepping carefully, placing one foot in front of the other while others cheered her on. The wood broke beneath you. Daniel continued quietly. You fell into the current during spring runoff when the water ran fast and deep. Everyone panicked. Adults were too far away. Without thinking, I jumped in after you. The memory crashed over Sophia like the water itself. She saw it now with sudden clarity. The shock of cold, the current pulling her under, lungs burning as she fought to surface. Then hands grabbing her, pulling her toward the bank. A boy's terrified face above hers as he struggled against the river's strength. You pulled me out, she whispered. You were smaller than me, but you got me to the shallow section. Then the current took you. Daniel nodded slowly. I went under 3 times before Mr. Patterson reached us. He pulled me out, but I had swallowed a lot of water. The ambulance took me to the hospital. By the time I recovered, summer had ended. When school started, you were different. Distant. I thought maybe you blamed me for not being strong enough to save you properly. Sophia pressed her hands to her face, tears slipping between her fingers. I do not remember anything after hitting the water. My parents told me I fell during a game and bumped my head. They said I was fine, that there was no need to dwell on it. I had nightmares about drowning for years, but no clear memories. Why did they lie to me? Fear, probably. Daniel sat on a park bench, pulling Sophia down beside him. I heard later that your parents blamed mine for letting us play near the river unsupervised. There were threats of lawsuits, accusations, terrible things said. Eventually, both families agreed to move past it by never speaking of it again. I think your parents wanted to protect you from trauma. They did not realize that forgetting would not erase what happened. Sophia leaned against him, processing revelations that recontextualized her entire childhood. So many things suddenly made sense. Her parents' overprotectiveness, their reaction when she announced plans to become a surgeon who would save lives, her inexplicable panic attacks near water, the recurring dreams of being pulled under. "You remembered," she said softly. "All this time you carried that day with you." Daniel nodded. "It changed me. I became cautious, afraid of taking risks. But it also taught me something important. When it mattered most, I did not hesitate. I saw you in danger and I acted. That moment showed me who I truly was beneath the fear and self-doubt." They sat together while the river flowed past, the same river that had nearly taken them both. Sophia processed not just the recovered memory, but its implications. This quiet librarian, this man the town dismissed as unremarkable, had risked his life for her when they were children. He had loved her even then, with the pure, uncomplicated love of childhood friendship. The next morning, Daniel returned to the library with a mission. He needed proof. Memories could be questioned, dismissed as convenient fabrications to justify his proposal. If he wanted the town to understand, if he wanted Sophia to fully know the truth, he needed documentation. The library's archive room held decades of local newspapers stored on microfilm. Daniel threaded the first reel through the reader and began searching. June, July, August of that year. He scanned headlines looking for any mention of a river accident involving children. He found it on page 3 of the August edition. The headline read, "Local Boy Hospitalized After River Rescue." The article described how 12-year-old Daniel Foster heroically attempted to save a classmate from drowning, nearly losing his own life in the process. The rescued child was not named due to privacy concerns, but details matched perfectly. The location, the date, the circumstances. Daniel printed the article, then continued searching. He found 2 more references. One appeared in an editorial about river safety. Another showed up in a letter to the editor from Mr. Patterson describing the incident and praising Daniel's courage. But he needed more. He walked to Willowbrook General Hospital and requested records from that date. After explaining his situation to a sympathetic records clerk, he received copies of his admission papers. The notes indicated treatment for near drowning, hypothermia, and exhaustion resulting from attempting to rescue another minor from the Willowbrook River. With documentation in hand, Daniel made one more stop. He visited Mr. Patterson, now retired and living in a small house near the park. The old man welcomed him warmly, remembered the incident immediately, and agreed to provide a written statement detailing everything he witnessed that day. By late afternoon, Daniel had assembled complete evidence of the truth. He returned to the library and found Sophia waiting for him. She had spent the day talking with her parents, confronting them about their decision to hide what happened. The conversation had been difficult but necessary. Her parents finally admitted their mistakes, acknowledged that trying to erase trauma had only complicated her healing. Daniel spread the documents across a library table. Sophia read through each one, her fingers tracing words that proved their shared history. When she finished, she looked at him with wonder. "You did all this today? You gathered evidence of your own heroism?" Daniel shook his head. "I gathered evidence of the truth. People need to understand why I proposed to you. Not because I am delusional or reaching above my station. Because our connection runs deeper than they can imagine. You changed my life twice. Once when I saved you and learned I was capable of courage. Again when you returned and reminded me that person still existed inside me." Sophia moved around the table and embraced him tightly. "The town needs to see this. They need to understand what they mocked." Daniel held her close, breathing in the reality that she was here, that she chose him, that their story had brought them back together after 20 years of separation. Tomorrow they would face Willowbrook together. Tonight they simply held on to each other beside books filled with other people's stories, grateful that their own narrative had found its proper continuation. The Willowbrook Community Center filled quickly Sunday afternoon. Word had spread that Daniel and Sophia requested a town meeting to address the festival incident. Some came out of curiosity. Others came hoping for entertainment, expecting more spectacle. A few came with genuine concern, uncomfortable with how events had unfolded. Daniel stood at the front of the room, Sophia beside him, while hundreds of faces stared back. He recognized most of them. These were people he had served at the library for years, neighbors he greeted politely, community members who barely noticed his existence. Now they watched with rapt attention, waiting to see what the quiet librarian could possibly say that warranted gathering them together. Mayor Thompson called the meeting to order and handed the microphone to Daniel. His hands shook slightly as he accepted it, but his voice emerged steady and clear. "Thank you all for coming. I know Friday night provided entertainment at my expense. I understand why many of you laughed. On the surface, my proposal to Sophia seemed absurd. A librarian proposing to a brilliant surgeon. An ordinary man reaching for an extraordinary woman. It looked like delusion or desperation." Uncomfortable shifting rippled through the crowd. Several people who had laughed loudest now studied their shoes with sudden fascination. "But there is a story you do not know," Daniel continued. "A story that explains everything. 20 years ago, Sophia and I were children playing by Willowbrook River. What happened that day changed both our lives, though only one of us remembered it." He nodded to his friend Thomas, who operated the projection equipment. The archived newspaper article appeared on the screen behind Daniel, enlarged so everyone could read the headline. "Local boy hospitalized after river rescue." Daniel recounted the incident in careful detail. Sophia's fall, his immediate response, the struggle against the current, Mr. Patterson's intervention, the hospitalization. He showed hospital records, witness statements, editorial mentions. Each piece of evidence built an undeniable picture. Sophia stepped forward to share her perspective. "For 20 years, I had nightmares about drowning without understanding why. My parents, trying to protect me from trauma, erased the memory by refusing to discuss it. I forgot that Daniel saved my life. I forgot his courage and selflessness. When he knelt before me Friday night, something broke through that forgetting. I saw his 12-year-old face clearly, saw him risking everything to help me. The room had gone completely silent. The same people who mocked now listened with growing shame. Mr. Patterson stood from his seat, his weathered face serious. I was there that day. I pulled young Daniel from the water after he had already gotten Sophia to safety. He was half drowned himself, exhausted and terrified, but he refused to let go of her until he knew she was breathing. I have seen many things in my 78 years, but few acts of courage match what this boy did, and you all laughed at him." The accusation hung heavy in the air. A woman in the third row began crying softly. Others looked away, unable to meet Daniel's eyes. One of the loudest mockers from Friday night stood up, his face red. "I owe you an apology, Daniel. We all do. We judged based on appearances and assumptions. We did not know the history between you." Daniel shook his head gently. "That is exactly the problem. You should not need to know someone saved another's life to treat their love with respect. Every person who proposes to someone they love deserves dignity, not mockery. The issue was not that you did not know our story. The issue was that you measured worth by superficial standards." His words struck hard because they rang true. Willowbrook prided itself on being a friendly community, but it had revealed an ugly truth. Appearance and status mattered more than character. The crowd had judged Daniel unworthy based solely on his humble profession and unremarkable looks. Sophia took the microphone again. "Daniel proposed to me because he saw who I truly am beneath the degrees and accolades. He loved me when we were children with scraped knees and missing teeth. He loved me when I came back exhausted and lonely despite professional success. His love is not based on what I have achieved but on who I am. That is the kind of love everyone deserves. That is the kind of love worth accepting, regardless of what others think. The mayor stood and addressed the crowd. This town has learned an important lesson today. We claim to value kindness and character, but we proved Friday night that we judge books by their covers. Daniel Foster has served this community faithfully for years, asking nothing in return except the opportunity to share stories and knowledge. He deserves better from us. Applause began slowly, then grew. People stood, clapping with genuine emotion. Some approached Daniel and Sophia afterward to offer personal apologies. The woman who had cried handed Sophia a handwritten note apologizing for her cruel laughter. A young man admitted he had joined the mockery to fit in, ashamed he lacked the courage to stand against the crowd. The healing process began that afternoon, but it continued for weeks afterward. The story spread beyond Willowbrook as news outlets picked up the tale of childhood rescue leading to adult romance. Messages poured in from around the country, people sharing their own stories of being judged unfairly or finding love in unexpected places. Daniel and Sophia used the attention to launch an initiative promoting water safety and childhood trauma awareness. They partnered with local schools to teach swimming and river safety. They funded counseling services for children dealing with suppressed memories. Their engagement became less about them and more about the positive change they could create together. 3 months later, on a crisp autumn morning, they married in Riverside Park beside the water that had nearly taken them but instead bound them together. The entire town attended, but the ceremony remained intimate and focused. No elaborate production, no designer dress, just two people promising to face life together with the same courage they had shown as children. Mr. Patterson served as best man, honored to witness the conclusion of a story he had helped save. Sophia's parents attended with tears and apologies, finally understanding that protecting their daughter had meant acknowledging hard truths, not hiding from them. Daniel's parents beamed with pride, grateful their son's bravery had finally received recognition. When Daniel and Sophia exchanged rings, the simple silver band from the proposal remained on her finger. She had refused to replace it with anything more expensive. This ring represented genuine love offered with pure intention. No diamond could improve its perfection. Their first kiss as husband and wife happened while the river flowed past, indifferent to human drama but essential to their story. The crowd applauded, but this time with joy rather than judgment. In the months that followed, Willowbrook transformed gradually. The incident sparked conversations about assumptions and biases. Parents talked with children about treating others with dignity regardless of differences. Local businesses displayed signs promoting kindness over status. The library saw increased visitors as people recognized its value and the man who tended it so carefully. Daniel continued his work, but now people stopped to talk, to ask for book recommendations, to share their own stories. He remained humble, unchanged by attention or acclaim. Sophia balanced her demanding surgical career with genuine presence at home. They built a life that honored both their individual callings and their shared connection. On the 1-year anniversary of the proposal, they returned to the festival. This time, Daniel did not stand at the edges. He and Sophia danced in the square while string lights glowed overhead and music filled the air. People smiled at them with genuine warmth, remembering not the mockery but the redemption that followed. A young boy approached Daniel nervously, clutching a book from the library. "You are the hero from the river story," he said quietly. "I want to be brave like you someday." Daniel knelt to the boy's level, seeing himself reflected in shy eyes. "You already are brave. Bravery is not about big dramatic moments. It is about choosing kindness when cruelty is easier. It is about standing up when others sit down. It is about loving genuinely when the world tells you to protect yourself. You can be brave every single day in small ways." The boy nodded seriously, then hugged Daniel before running back to his parents. Sophia watched the exchange with a smile, knowing she had chosen exactly the right person to spend her life beside. Their story became part of Willowbrook's identity, told to newcomers as an example of the town's values. Not the initial mockery, but the learning and growth that followed. The place that had laughed learned to love. The community that judged learned to see deeper. Years later, when their own children asked how their parents met, Daniel and Sophia told them the complete truth. The river rescue, the forgotten memories, the public proposal, the mockery, and the redemption. They taught their children that real love sees beyond surfaces, that courage comes in many forms, and that the most important connections often begin in unexpected moments of crisis and grace. The truth had stunned them all those years ago, but it also freed them. Freed Daniel to claim the love he deserved. Freed Sophia to remember and honor the boy who saved her. Freed an entire town to examine its values and choose better. And in that freedom, they all found something precious, the understanding that worth is not determined by others' opinions, but by the content of one's character and the courage to love authentically despite the cost.